The whiskey burned my throat, but it was nothing compared to the fire in his eyes across the table. I'd never seen James Caldwell, my stoic senior attorney, unravel like this dilute. Voice raw, confessing secrets in a dive bar at 2 a.m. By dawn, I knew I'd fallen for the one man I swore I'd never want. My name is Ethan Harper, 28, a junior associate at Caldwell and Pierce, New York's most ruthless law firm. I'd spent 2 years under James's shadow, enduring his icy critiques and unrelenting standards. He was 42, a legal legend with a reputation for shredding opponents and associates alike. Cold, calculated, untouchable, that was James. Or so I thought until that night. It started with a case we'd won that afternoon. A brutal corporate merger defense that had kept us in the office for weeks. The client, a tech giant, threw a lavish celebration at the Rusty Anchor, a gritty bar in Hell's Kitchen. I was there for the free drinks, expecting James to skip it like always. But there he was, in a corner booth, nursing a double scotch, his usual armor of control slightly cracked. "Harper," he said, voice low, motioning to the seat across from him. "Sit. You're not as useless as I thought today." It was the closest thing to a compliment I'd ever gotten from him. I slid into the booth, heart pounding for reasons I couldn't name. The bar buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but our corner felt like a separate world. James ordered another round, then another. I matched him, shot for shot, the alcohol loosening my tongue. I rambled about my small-town Ohio roots, my dreams of making it big in New York, my fear of never being enough. He listened, really listened, his sharp blue eyes softening in a way that made my chest ache. "You're not nothing, Ethan," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the bar's din. "You're inconvenient." The word hung between us, heavy with meaning I didn't dare unpack. I laughed it off, but his gaze didn't waver. Hours blurred. The crowd thinned. By 1 a.m., it was just us, the whiskey, and a dangerous honesty. "Why do you push everyone away?" I asked, emboldened by the liquor. He leaned back, jaw tight, then leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Because it's easier," he said. "No one gets close. No one gets hurt." His voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the legenda, man haunted by something he wouldn't name. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was me, reaching for the bottle. Maybe it was him, his hand brushing mine. But when our fingers touched, the air shifted. His eyes locked on mine, and I felt Ida pull, electric and terrifying. "Ethan," he whispered, my name sounding like a confession. We stumbled out into the chilly New York night, his arm around my shoulders for balance or something else. The city hummed around us, but all I could hear was my pulse. He stopped under a flickering street lamp, his breath visible in the cold. "This is a mistake," he said, but he didn't move away. "Then why does it feel right?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer. Instead, he kissed me hard, desperate, like a man drowning. I kissed him back, the world falling away. We ended up at his apartment, a sleek penthouse that screamed wealth and isolation. Clothes hit the floor. Whiskey and want blurred the lines of right and wrong. For one night, James Caldwell wasn't my untouchable boss. He was just a man, and I was the one he couldn't resist. Morning came too soon. I woke on his couch, head pounding, his scent still on my skin. He stood by the window, back in his suit, cold as ever. "This changes nothing," he said, not looking at me. "Get out." I left, heart in pieces. But I knew one truth. That night had changed everything. The office felt like a battlefield Monday morning. James's voice sliced through the conference room. dismantling a junior associate's work with surgical precision. I sat across from him, pretending to take notes, but my mind was stuck on his lips, his hands, the way he'd whispered my name in the dark. "Harper, you're distracted," he snapped, his eyes meeting mine for a split second before looking away. The room froze, but no one else knew the weight of that glance. I mumbled an apology, my face burning. 2 days ago, he'd kissed me like I was oxygen. Now, I was just another subordinate. The week dragged on, each day a test of endurance. James avoided me, delegating tasks through emails or other associates. I buried myself in work, drafting contracts until midnight, trying to forget the heat of his touch. But every time I passed his office, I caught glimpses of him head bent over files, jaw set, untouchable again. By Friday, I couldn't take it. I cornered him in the file room, the hum of fluorescent lights our only witness. "We need to talk," I said, voice shaking. He didn't look up from the folder in his hands. "There's nothing to discuss," he said, his tone flat. "It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I stepped closer, anger flaring. "You don't get to kiss me. Take me home, then pretend it didn't happen." He slammed the folder shut, finally meeting my eyes. "What do you want?" "Ethan. A declaration of love. A relationship. I don't do those. You knew who I was." His words stung, but I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. "I know you're scared," I said softly, "but I felt something that night. And I know you did too." He laughed, a bitter sound. "You're naive. Go back to your desk." I didn't. I spent the weekend replaying every moment, every word. By Monday, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't let him bury this. I started small-lingering in his office after meetings, asking questions about cases, watching for cracks in his armor. Slowly, he softened. A nod here, a half-smile there. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me going. Then came the late nights. A new case, a high-profile divorce, kept us in the office past midnight. One evening, as we pored over depositions, he handed me a coffee. "You look like you need it," he said, his voice almost gentle. Our fingers brushed, and I swear the room shrank. "James," I started, but he cut me off. "Don't," he said, but he didn't move his hand. We stood there, frozen, the air thick with unspoken words. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered, his face hardening as he listened. "I have to go," he said, grabbing his coat. "Who was that?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. "None of your business," he snapped, and he was gone. I stayed, staring at the papers, my heart a mess. I didn't know then that the call was from his ex, a man named Daniel, who'd left him years ago and still knew how to unravel him. All I knew was that James was slipping away, and I was too stubborn to let him go. The divorce case consumed us. Late nights became our routine. The office a strange sanctuary where James and I danced around the truth. He was still distant, but there were moments his hand lingering on a file I handed him, his voice softening when he said my name that kept me tethered to hope. One night, as rain pounded the office windows, I found a photo in his desk drawer while searching for a stapler. It was James, younger, laughing with a man whose arm was around him. They looked happy, unguarded, a version of James I'd never seen. I slipped the photo back, but the image haunted me. "Who's Daniel?" I asked the next evening, unable to hold it in. We were alone, sorting through case files, the city's glow filtering through the blinds. James froze, his pen hovering over a page. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked, his voice low. Dangerous. I saw a photo. I admitted. You looked happy. He stood, pacing to the window. Daniel was a lifetime ago. He said finally. He's not your concern. But he is. I pressed. He called you. I saw how you reacted. James turned, his face a storm. You don't get to dig into my past. Ethan, you don't get to fix me. I'm not trying to fix you, I said, standing. I just want to know you. He laughed, sharp and hollow. You wouldn't like what you find. Try me, I challenged. He stepped closer, so close I could smell his cologne. For a moment, I thought he'd kiss me again. Instead, he turned away. Daniel was my partner, he said, voice barely audible. 10 years. He left when I chose my career over him. End of story. The weight of his words settled between us. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him I wasn't Daniel. But the phone rang again. He answered, his face paling. I'll be there, he said, and hung up. Without a word, he left, leaving me with a stack of files and a sinking heart. The next day, I overheard a paralegal mention Daniel's name in connection with a new client. Curiosity got the better of me. I dug through case files and found it, Daniel Carter, plaintiff in a high-stakes property dispute, had requested James personally. My stomach churned. This wasn't just about the past, it was crashing into our present. When James returned, I confronted him. You're taking Daniel's case. After everything. It's work, he said, avoiding my eyes. It's what I do. It's more than that, I snapped. You're running back to him. He slammed his hand on the desk. You don't know what you're talking about. Ethan, stay out of it. But I couldn't. Not when I was falling for him. Not when I saw the pain he tried to hide. I knew then I'd fight for him, even if it meant facing his past head-on. Meeting Daniel Carter was like stepping into James's shadow. He was charming, polished, with warm brown eyes and a smile that could disarm anyone. At 45, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd once held James's heart. I hated him instantly. The property dispute case brought Daniel into our office daily. James assigned me to assist. A cruel twist I couldn't refuse. Daniel was all business in meetings, but his glances at James lingered too long. Heavy with history. James, to his credit, kept it professional, but I saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hands clenched when Daniel spoke. One afternoon, I caught them alone in James's office. Voices low. You've changed, Daniel said, almost tender. I slipped away before I heard James's reply. My chest tight with jealousy and fear. Was I just a fleeting distraction? A drunken mistake to be forgotten? I threw myself into the case, hoping work would drown out my doubts. Late one night, as we reviewed documents, James broke the silence. You're good at this, Ethan, he said, his voice soft. Better than I was at your age. The compliment caught me off guard. Then why do you keep me at arm's length? I asked. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Because you make me feel things I don't want to feel. Not after. He trailed off. But I knew he meant Daniel. Then let me in, I said, leaning closer. I'm not him. His eyes met mine, raw and unguarded. I know, he whispered. That's what scares me. Before I could respond, Daniel walked in, breaking the moment. Am I interrupting? He asked, his tone light, but his eyes sharp. James stood, all business again, and I was left reeling. The case intensified, and so did the tension. Daniel's presence was a constant reminder of James's walls. But I refused to back down. I started leaving small gestures of coffee on his desk. A note with a case in sight. Slowly, James thawed. One night, he even laughed at a joke I made. A sound so rare it felt like a victory. But Daniel wasn't done. At a client dinner, he cornered me in the hallway. "James isn't who you think," he said, voice low. "He'll choose his career over you, just like he did with me." I wanted to argue, but his words hit hard. That night, I lay awake, wondering if I was fighting a losing battle. Still, I couldn't walk away, not when every glance from James felt like a promise. Not when I was already in too deep. Daniel's warning echoed in my head, but I pushed it aside. I'd seen James's walls crack, felt the heat of his gaze. I wasn't giving up. The property dispute case was nearing its climax, and with it, the stakes between us grew higher. One evening, James asked me to stay late to prepare for a hearing. The office was empty, the city's skyline glittering beyond the windows. We worked in silence, but the air was charged. When I handed him a file, our hands brushed, and he didn't pull away. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "why do you keep pushing?" "Because you're worth it," I said, heart racing. "Because I see you, James. Not the legend. Not the cold attorney, the real you." He stared at me, something breaking in his expression. Then, slowly, he leaned in and kissed me. It was softer than that drunken night, but no less desperate. I kissed him back, pouring everything into it, me hope, my fear, my need. We pulled apart, breathless. "This can't happen here," he said, but his hand stayed on my arm. "Then where?" I asked, half joking, half pleading. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "My place. Tomorrow night." The next day, I could barely focus. Daniel noticed, his eyes narrowing during a meeting. "Careful, Ethan," he said later, catching me alone. "James doesn't do commitment. You'll get hurt." I ignored him, but doubt crept in. That night, at James's penthouse, I saw a different side of him. He cooked dinner simple, but thoughtful. We talked about everything but work, my love for jazz, his secret passion for old movies. For the first time, he felt like mine. But reality intruded. Halfway through dinner, his phone buzzed. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. James silenced it, but the mood shifted. "He's relentless," James muttered. "Why does he still have this hold on you?" I asked, unable to stop myself. James sighed, setting down his fork. "He was my first love. When he left, I swore I'd never let anyone in again. But you," he reached for my hand. "You're making that impossible." My heart soared, but Daniel's words lingered. The hearing loomed, and with it, a choice. James could win the case and keep Daniel in his life, or risk losing both. I didn't know which he'd choose, but I knew I'd fight for him until the end. The hearing was a pressure cooker. James was in his element, sharp and commanding, tearing through the opposing counsel's arguments. I watched from the sidelines, pride mixing with dread. Daniel sat in the gallery, his presence a shadow over every word James spoke. We won. The judge ruled in Daniel's favor, securing his property rights. The team celebrated, but James's eyes were distant. At the office party that night, Daniel pulled him aside. Their conversation heated. I couldn't hear them, but I saw James's shoulders tense, his hands clenched. I left early, unable to watch. Back at my apartment, I paced, replaying every moment with James. Was I fooling myself, thinking I could compete with a decade of history? My phone buzzed at midnight. "James, I'm outside," he said when I answered. I buzzed him up, heart pounding. He looked exhausted, his tie gone, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. I told Daniel it's over, he said, stepping inside. For good this time. I stared, hope battling disbelief. What changed? You, he said simply. I've spent years hiding. Ethan. From myself. From everyone. But you see me. And I don't want to lose that. He kissed me. Slow and certain. And I felt the walls between us crumble. We spent the night together. Not just in passion, but in truth-talking. Laughing. Sharing pieces of ourselves we'd both kept hidden. The next morning, reality hit. The firm's partners called James into a meeting. Rumors about us had spread. Someone had seen us leave the bar that first night. They want me to choose, James said, face grim. My career or this? My stomach dropped. What did you tell them? Nothing yet, he said. But I'm not letting you go. The days that followed were a blur of tension. James fought to keep his position, arguing that his personal life didn't affect his work. I stood by him. But doubt gnawed at me. What if Daniel was right? What if James's career always came first? Then, a breakthrough. A senior partner, an older woman named Margaret, pulled me aside. He's fighting for you, she said. I've never seen him like this. Don't give up on him. I didn't. But as the firm's decision loomed, I braced for the worst. Praying James's heart was as brave as his courtroom persona. The firm's ultimatum hung over us like a storm cloud. James was summoned to a final meeting with the partners. And I waited outside, heart in my throat. I'd seen him conquer courtrooms. But this was different. This was us. He emerged after an hour. Face unreadable. They're keeping me, he said, voice steady. But there's a catch. What? I asked, bracing myself. I'm off high-profile cases for 6 months. Probation. Essentially. He smiled faintly. Worth it. Relief flooded me. But so did guilt. James, your career isn't everything. He interrupted. You taught me that. We celebrated quietly that night. Just the two of us at his penthouse. No whiskey. No pretense, just us. Tangled in each other. Building something real. But the world wasn't done testing us. Daniel reappeared. Unannounced. At the office a week later. I need to talk, he said, ignoring me. James hesitated. Then led him to a conference room. I waited. Every second agony. When James returned, his face was pale. He's moving to London, he said. Wanted closure. And? I asked. Voice tight. I gave it to him. James said. I told him I'm in love with you. The words hit like a tidal wave. I pulled him into a kiss, not caring who saw. For the first time, I felt certain we were in this together. But love didn't erase the challenges. The firm's probation meant James worked grueling hours on low-stakes cases, his pride taking a hit. I stayed late with him, sharing takeout and quiet moments. We grew closer, learning each other's quirks, his love for black and white films, my habit of humming jazz tunes while working. One night, as we lay in bed, he traced circles on my hand. I was wrong, he said, about you being a mistake. You're the best thing I've ever done. Tears stung my eyes. You're not so bad yourself, I teased. But my voice broke. The firm's scrutiny eased over time, but whispers followed us. Colleagues watched, waiting for us to falter. I didn't care. James was mine, and I was his, and no one could take that away. 6 months later, James was back on top, leading a major case with his old fire. I watched him in court, marveling at the man I'd fallen for fierce, brilliant, and finally open to love. The firm had accepted us, grudgingly, and we'd carved out a life together. We moved in together, blending my chaotic jazz records with his orderly film collection. Mornings were coffee and shared smiles. Nights were debates over case law and stolen kisses. But the real victory wasn't our lovey, it was James's. One evening, he took me to the Rusty Anchor, where it all began. The bar was the same, gritty, alive, full of memories. He led me to our old booth. A small chalkboard sign on the table. Written in his elegant scrawl were the words, "One drunken night led to forever." "Marry me," he said, pulling out a simple silver ring. My heart stopped, then soared. "Yes," I whispered, tears falling as he slid the ring onto my finger. We kissed under the bar's neon glow, the world fading away. That night, I realized the truth. Love wasn't just the fire of that first drunken night. It was the quiet moments, the fights, the choice to stay. James had been my cold-hearted senior attorney, but he'd become my home. Our story wasn't perfect. The firm still watched us, and the world wasn't always kind. But we'd faced our fears as past, my doubts, our uncertain future, and come out stronger. One drunken night had sparked it all, but it was our courage that made it last. As we left the bar, hand in hand, I knew we'd write our own ending. One case, one kiss, one day at a time.